Hi everyone, and welcome to the Friday Focus. So today I want to show you guys how to use light and bokeh stocks on your images and how to best manipulate those stock and overlay textures so that they blend well with your images. So right here we have an image of our friend Carmen Spiller, and I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of light stocks to this, but first let's show you a couple of images we've pulled up here and a couple of light textures I've also pulled up. So we've got this one of Carmen, this one of me at the coast, another shot from the coast, and one in the woods. And here are the light textures I've pulled up. These are actually from our stock packs, so if you are interested in purchasing some light textures or stock images, you can go ahead and click this link to go to our Etsy page where you can go ahead and pick through quite a variety of stuff we've created. And these are all things we use in our own images quite frequently. So you should notice these are the same image. This one has been grayscaled though and lifted in the black sections. And I'm going to explain why in a bit. Here's the same thing in its natural dark colors. And here is a sun overlay style flare, and I'll show you what we'll do with that soon. And a bit more of a distinct glitter shot. So let's go ahead and go back to our first image with Carmen. There's a couple things I want to do with this image, and perhaps some of you have actually already seen the finished image. We're going to go ahead and add a light flare right here, and then add some bokeh that spills out across here. And it's going to look pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get that big sun flare right here. So let's do Control A, Control C, then we're going to go back to our image and do Control V to paste. And yep, as you can see, that has entered the stock onto our image. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is do Control T, and we're going to spin this a little bit while holding Shift down so that it lines up pretty perfectly, like so. Then we're actually going to flip this horizontally and then line it up with our image. And even though this image is slightly bigger than this shot of Carmen, I'm actually going to line it up towards this corner and then hit Enter. So while we're waiting for that, essentially what light stock is it's an image or stock overlay that will add light to your image. So that could be bokeh, like we showed you here, or it can be this light flare right here. It's just anything that messes with the lights and darks of your image. So now that we have this stock sun flare overlay over the top, what we're going to do, as you can see, it actually already added a nice layer here for us, which is pretty awesome. We're going to go ahead and click on these blend modes right here while having this selected and pick from a few. Now, when working with light stock overlays, there are 3 different sections I would recommend you use. You're either going to use lighten, which in this case does not look so great. I don't really like the way lighten looks on this image. Or you're going to use screen, which is pretty awesome. Screen is probably the most versatile when working with light stock. Or you're going to use overlay. And overlay kind of works in this image, but it's not really what I'm going for. And I'm actually going to show you where overlay becomes more useful later. So let's go back to screen. That's definitely the method we're going to use for this image. Now that worked pretty well. We've got the sun flare that's definitely kind of coming through on the trees here, and if we click off of this, you can definitely see the trees are pretty distinctly there. But now it kind of looks like they're fading out because of the sun coming in behind them. Now I think there's a little bit too much of this flare in our image, and we're going to do a couple of quick methods here to reduce how much of that flare is coming through. So the first thing we're going to do is go up to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. When you're working with black versus whites essentially in an image, brightness and contrast is one of the fastest and easiest ways to adjust how that overlay is working. So with brightness, we could reduce that a bit if we wanted, or we could leave it pretty bright Then we could use the contrast to kind of really hone in where exactly that is, because now this area is getting darker over here, and we can actually, you can see that by looking at this little layer right here, that the flare has kind of been reduced in this area and now is mostly in this area. I kind of like the way that looks, actually, even though it's pretty extreme. And if I really want to now, I could use the reduce the brightness a little bit, and that kind of also hones in how much space that bright flare is taking up in this image now. So let's go ahead and click OK. So we have adjusted our layer here and its color ranges, and that has greatly reduced the effect we're getting right here. Now the next thing we could do is click on our layer mask while this is selected, that little button right there, and that creates a layer mask for us. And then we're going to go up to our brush here. Brush tool is selected, and we actually already have black. Now the way layer masks work is that you've got your white and your black, and when you are on your layer mask, black will delete effect that this is creating on your image, and white will add it back in. So we want to delete some effect. So black is already selected, and that's perfect. I'm going to adjust the size of my brush, go up here, make sure its hardness is actually pretty soft, and the opacity is 100% for now, and I might adjust that later. And then I'm just going to go ahead and remove some of this effect in this area. There we go. So we just get a little bit more solidness on her face. And that's honestly good for now. I mean, if I was really working on this image and tweaking it, I would probably spend a little bit more time determining how much of this I actually want in my image. But since this is just a tutorial, I think that's fine. So with that done, we have pretty much, I think, gotten that light flare into the area we need. And we have really decided where we need that flare to be. Now there's one other thing you can do with this flare. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and click on the actual lens flare section and not on the layer mask. So with that selected, let's go up to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. This is a great way to quickly adjust the colors of the light layer you have. And to do that, you're just going to click your Hue button right here with your master on, since you're on your light layer, and adjust what color the light is playing off as. You can make it ridiculous. You could actually make it blue toned if you want. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of keep it close to where I had it. Yeah, actually I'm good with it, so I'm not actually going to adjust mine, but if you needed to adjust what color your light is coming in as, that's how you would do it. That covers adding that section. Now let's go ahead and add some bokeh to this image. I'm going to go ahead and click this one, so Control A again, Control C, then we take it to our image, Control V, and Control T to transform, hold Shift while moving it into the right position, and that will make it so that it lines up pretty perfectly. We'll move it up into position. Now I don't really like the way the composition is working with this one. I'm actually going to reverse it. So let's go ahead and transform again while we're still in transform, and we're going to flip horizontal again and enter. So now that's in place, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing since we're working with a dark background here, and do screen. And that's looking pretty cool. Now there is a little bit too much, I think, of these light spots coming through, and there might be a little bit too much light haze as well. So first, actually, what I'm going to do though is go ahead and get a layer mask on there. I've got my brush and my black tool, and I'm just going to remove some sections that are kind of bothering me. So I want to keep her face pretty clear, her hands, just kind of put some spaces of clarity in there. Maybe that's a little bit too much, actually. I'm kind of liking a little bit of that in there. So let's go ahead and reduce the opacity a bit. There we go. Alright, so that's actually pretty good. Now this light does match this pretty well. I'm actually not disturbed by much of the light flooding happening from this particular piece of stock, so I'm not actually going to use the contrast tools to darken it. And for the sake of this tutorial, I would consider this image finished. I mean, obviously you could do a little bit of tweaking here and there to get your image where you want, but that pretty much shows you how to use those kinds of light pieces. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use the gray style stock. So let's go ahead and get one of these images, and I'm actually going to open another kind of file that I don't have open right now. So I'm going to go ahead, I've got the sparkle stock here, and it's got this colored background. And we're going to use this. So Control A, Control C, go to our image right here, and Control V. And these images are the exact same size, so they actually match up pretty well. One thing you'll notice about this stock piece is it's actually got some texture to it besides the bokeh. It's got this mesh netting that was used to hold the sparkles in place on the fabric. Let's go ahead and take that, and we'll do overlay this time instead. And obviously that looks pretty crazy. So let's go ahead and rein it in a bit. So we're actually going to reduce it. I'm going to go ahead and also change the color. And so this is one thing you'll notice. Screen works really well for images that have dark backgrounds with the light. So if the light texture you have has a dark black background, it's going to work really well with screen without making too much flooding or noise of light, as you can see here. When you are using a background that has a lightly colored or textured background, you're probably going to want to go with overlay because it's going to mesh a bit better. So with this texture selected, I'm actually going to go to image, and I think I played with curves once when I was playing with this one. Yeah, and you get this weird fiery look. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm probably going to also reduce the opacity on this so it kind of goes in a little bit less. And then we're also going to go to image adjustments, hue and saturation. Alright, so with a stock image like this, what you'll notice is it's kind of interacting with the image like a double exposure. So with this overlay effect, pretty much anywhere there's light, you're not really getting much of the texture. But anywhere there's darkness, you're going to see that texture. So it kind of creates that double exposure. And we're going to go ahead and reduce a little bit of that using this layer mask again. And we've got black selected, we've got our brush, we're at 43%, but that's actually kind of okay. I'm okay starting with a lower opacity. So I'm going to actually remove a bit of the effect, and then I'm actually going to do that in the sky as well, because I think it's getting a little overexposed. Perhaps. It might also just kind of be that way. It's kind of cool. So that's just something you can do with that style of texture. Now I do actually want to show you the grayscale one with overlay as well, because it does have a very different effect. Let's go ahead and pick this image, and let's find one of our grayscaled textures. Let's see here. There we go. Control A, Control C to copy. Go back to our image, and Control V, and then Control T to transform. Alright, and enter. And then we're going to go ahead and click overlay. Now, what you'll notice with overlay is it will affect your whites and darks kind of dramatically. Like it will start to overexpose or expose up your light areas in the texture, and it will expose down your dark areas in the texture. So with the gray overlay style, what you want to do is you want to find a balance so that the gray is as neutral on your image as possible. And to do that, we're going to go up to Image, Adjustments again, and go to Brightness and Contrast. And I think the best way to do this is to start with brightness. So upping the brightness quite a bit is kind of helping me balance out how the overlay is working on my image. And I'd say this is pretty close to the original image. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So now you can kind of test it. It's still a little bit darker, but it works. And so now you'll see what the overlay light spots are doing to the image. Up here in the hair, it's kind of exposing up the dark areas of the hair, which is kind of interesting. And then in these areas, it's just kind of brightening the background spots, but then also kind of lightening up areas of the sticks and my skin. So that's the difference between, actually, to make a really good example, let's actually go get the other version of this stock. Control A, Control C, and let's go to our image, Control V, Control T to transform. Close enough, and we'll say enter. And then we're going to go ahead and do screen. So let's remove these one at a time. So this is what it looks like with screen on, and this is what it looks like with overlay. So these different blend modes are going to have a different look when you use them, and by grayscaling one of your stock images, you can really kind of create a different effect. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and show you quickly how to grayscale one of these stock images. So let's go to the one we're actually using, this one. So to do that, we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. We're going to turn the image black and white like so. Click OK. Go to Image, Adjustments, Selective Color. We're going to go to the blacks right here, and then we're going to move the blacks down. And that's how you create yourself a grayscaled version of your light texture. And that is what you would want to use with your overlay style blend mode. So we're going to cancel that, go ahead and be done with that. So in this one, we've showed you what you can kind of do with overlay and light spot textures. In this one, we can kind of see the difference between what your effect will be depending on what style of blend mode you need, and also what style of image you need to have that blend mode. And in our first image over here, we also took a look at how you use the basic light to dark scaled textures. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you what you can do with some sparkle stock that's really tight and small. It'll kind of have a different look than your typical bokeh, but it's kind of fun. So here is our stock image that we created. I'm going to go ahead and go Control A, Control C, go back to our image, Control V, and that actually pasted on pretty darn well. So we're going to use the overlay texture again. And as you can see, that's a little bit too bright. So we're going to affect our gray again by going up to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. And we're going to reduce the brightness. So by reducing the brightness, what we're noticing here is we can see a little bit of the sparkles going on around the image. But interestingly enough, when you have a dark background and you have really small style sparkles, where it's going to show up the most is actually on the light spot of the image. So in this case, the model here you can actually kind of see the sparkles kind of glittering across them, which is kind of interesting. I'm still messing around a lot with light textures, and I'm sure I'm probably going to do some tutorials in the future about how to use them even more intricately. But for now, this is just kind of the basics of how to use these textures. As you can see here, there's quite a bit you can do with them. And this is definitely one of my favorite looks, adding that sun flare over the shoulder and then this light textures in the front. And it's a really easy way to kind of enhance your images and make them a lot more beautiful. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be sure to take a look at them, and who knows, maybe you guys will have some good ideas on how else we can use these awesome light textures. And again, we are selling these at our Etsy shop for a pretty cheap fee for what they are. So you can go ahead and play with the exact same stock images that we're using here, and we will be adding more and more to that in the future. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.